you give a go ahead from the streaming point of view, and then Diksha gets started.
Sir, we are on live.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
On to you. I'm just putting myself on mute.
Well, a very good afternoon, everyone, and I hope all of you are doing well, and you and your loved ones are all safe. Well, a great sports person had once said, "You can achieve anything in life. It just depends on how desperate you are to achieve it." These were words that taught generations of Indians how to chase their dreams. Dreams, my dear guests, and everyone watching this panel discussion out there, are the very essence of every sports person's life. Dreams are what they chase, the dream of an Olympic medal. So, on behalf of Odisha Naval Tata Hockey High Performance Center, Abhinav Bindra Foundation Trust, and the Department of Sports and Youth Services, Government of Odisha, I, Diksha Tiwari, welcome you all to this webinar, India's Best Shot at the Olympic Dream, on the occasion of Olympic Day. Let me go back to the very quote I started with. These were the words of Milkha Singh, one of India's greatest sportsperson who turned a pathbreaker for a whole country. The man who brought India numerous glories in the track and field events back when no one thought it was possible. Well, he almost owned a medal in Rome in 1960, missed it by a whisker, but it was his Olympic dream that fueled the minds of millions of Indians. It is only befitting that this webinar has been organized to mark the Olympic Day, and in doing so, we would like to pay rich tributes to the Flying Sikh who taught us what chasing a dream means. Let's do that through a small AV before we proceed towards the introduction of our guests and this webinar. So let's take a look at this AV.
एशियन गेम्स क्या होती हैं, 100 मीटर क्या होता है, 400 मीटर क्या होता है, मिल्खा सिंह को कुछ मालूम नहीं। इसका क्रेडिट जो है, आज मिल्खा सिंह का नाम अगर दुनिया भर में है या इंडिया का नाम दुनिया भर में है, तो इसका क्रेडिट मैं आर्मी को देता हूं।
इतना करता पुरख निर्भय निर्वैर अकाल मूरत अजूनी सैभं गुर प्रसाद जप आद
Well, legends never die. They actually live through their work. And this was such a befitting tribute to the late Milkha Singh. And it brings us to the realization that the pandemic has actually snatched away so many things from us, and including such gems that we had. So may his soul rest in peace. And but yes, we are here to celebrate Olympic Day and to remember, like I said, legends never die. They live through their work. And with that spirit, we would like to now take this opportunity to introduce our esteemed guests to this webinar. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Vishal Kumar Dev, Principal Secretary, Department of Sports and Youth Services and Tourism, Government of Odisha. Graduated in the year 1990 with a degree in computer science and engineering from IIT, BHU, and then studied management at IIM Lucknow. Worked for about 3 years in the corporate sector before joining the IS in 1996. Since the time that Mr. Dev has taken the helm of sports in Odisha as the Commissioner cum Secretary, Sports and Youth Services, the state has hosted several international sporting events and earned global accolades, some of which include the Asian Athletics Championship 2017, Hockey Men's World Cup 2018, FIH Men's Series Final 2019, Commonwealth Table Tennis Championship 2019, FIH Hockey Pro League 2020, and the recent Khelo India University Games. Along with sports, of course, he's been entrusted with the additional charge of Tourism Department, Government of Odisha. Under his aegis, the sports ecosystem in Odisha is being strengthened holistically to make sports inclusive and accessible to all. And it won't be wrong to say that he's been instrumental in helping the state earn the prestigious tag of the sports capital of India. So very warm welcome to you, sir. Would also like to now welcome the man, who exemplifies everything that late Milkha Singh had said, Mr. Abhinav Bindra, Olympic gold medalist, founder ABTB, currently India's only individual Olympic gold medalist. He is gold in the 10-meter air rifle event at the 2008 Summer Olympics, was also India's first Olympic gold medal since 1980, is the first Indian to have held concurrently the world and Olympic titles for the men's 10-meter air rifle event, having earned those honors at the 2008 Summer Olympics and the 2006 ISSF World Shooting Championship. He's also won 9 medals at the Commonwealth Games, gold medals at the Asian Games. With more than 150 medals in his 22-year career, he's the recipient of Padma Bhushan from the Government of India and is one of the top influencers of sports policy in the country. In 2018, he was bestowed with the prestigious Blue Cross, the ISSF's highest honor. He's also currently a member of the IOC Athletes Commission. At the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, he was the flag bearer and also served as a goodwill ambassador for the Olympics Indian contingent. On September 5, 2016, he announced his retirement. His primary outreach to Indian sports is through the Abhinav Bindra Foundation, a non-profit organization that works to integrate sports, science, and technology into Indian sports and encourage high-performance physical training. So very warm welcome to you, Mr. Bindra. I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Chanakya Chaudhary, Vice President, Corporate Services, Tata Steel Limited, a Bachelor of Engineering Honours Mechanical from BITS Pilani. He has undergone various prestigious management programs like Young Managers Program at INSEAD France in 1997, Tata Group Executive Leadership Program in 2007, conducted by Michigan Ross School of Business, and Executive MBA from CDP France in 2008-9. He's joined Tata Steel in 1988 as a graduate engineer trainee in the raw material division at Jharia, Dhanbad, India. And during his stint in the collieries division, he worked in various capacities and was subsequently transferred to total quality management, wherein he was responsible for working with various divisions of Tata Steel for getting ISO 9000 certification. He's worked as a lead assessor for Tata Group in his journey of business excellence and for JRD Quality Value Award based on the Malcolm Baldrige Award criteria. He was also assigned as Chief Resident Executive Delhi and was handling corporate affairs of the company, was designated as Group Director, Corporate Communication and Regulatory Affairs, and since then has been appointed as the Vice President, Corporate Services, where he'll be handling the functions of corporate administration, corporate communication, CSR, security, aviation, sports, and medical services. Also the co-chair of the FICCI Mining Subcommittee and the FICCI National Sports Committee, is the chairman of the Hockey Ace Foundation, the Tata Steel initiative to promote hockey in the country, serves as a member of the National Committee for Mining of CII, the Jharkhand State CII Council, the Eastern Region Council of CII, and the Indian Steel Association. He's also a member of the Communication Committee of World Steel Association. So a very warm welcome to you, Mr. Chaudhary. And of course, before we start the webinar and I hand it over to my co-host, Mr. Rajiv Seth, Project Director, Odisha Tata Naval Hockey High Performance Center, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce him as well. An ex-first class cricketer from Bengal and Odisha, the first batch trainee and product of MRF Pace Foundation Madras, now Chennai, of course, coached by legendary Dennis Lillee, played as a professional in English and Scottish Premier Division leagues. Having completed his ACC, ACB Level 3 coaching education program, he has also coached Malaysian national cricket team in 2010, graduated from Hindu College, Delhi University, and did his special management from IIM Kolkata. He had a short stint with Jamshedpur FC in the inaugural year, handling the administration and operation, and has served in various capacities within Tata Steel before, of course, his current position of the project director of Naval Tata Hockey High Performance Center. And I would also like to inform that he's in fact just recently recovered from COVID as well, but his spirits are up and he wanted to get on with work and with these webinars, which he has been conducting on a very religious basis. So a very warm welcome to you as well, Rajiv, and I would now request you to take this session from here.
Thank you, Diksha. I think I will be failing in my duties if I don't introduce yourself. In fact, I thought that you would make a little mention about yourself. I know that's your modesty. Diksha wears many hats, as we see on the slides: journalism, RJ, TV anchor, MC, moderator. She's been the lady behind most of the flagship events, which Vishal sir will vouch, which we have conducted in Odisha in the sporting events. And obviously from literary festival to national, international conferences and sports tournaments, including the Hockey World Cups, as I mentioned, some flagship events, and some beauty pageants like Femina Miss India East. These are all very, very high quality events, spearheaded by Diksha, to say the least. And obviously Ms. Diksha is also currently serving as a communication head for XCBS Ahluwalia Center for Excellence in Sports Management, which is one of the HPCs located out of Bhubaneswar in the field of sports management. This is with the very, very famous Amiens French University, and it's a great initiative. Thank you for being there, Diksha. A quick one, but thank you, because together we put some webinars, and I hope the listener friends and the viewers must have enjoyed that too. And why does this enjoyment come and why does this appreciation comes is only because of the quality of people we interact with, the luminaries and the personalities as guest speakers. And today amongst us, as you have already given an intro, we have Abhinav Bindra, who better to talk to when we are approaching towards Olympic journey once again. And obviously Mr. Vishal Dev, you have very briefly touched upon. The more it's said is less it is, in my view, because I have worked very closely here in the last 2 years, and I can tell you they work very differently, and it's a pleasure to be here and working under them. Mr. Chanakya Chaudhary, as you have mentioned, the kind of hats he has worn over the period of time and led our company to greater heights in senior management positions. So we will go along and we make it even more enriching by our discussion. Let me just quickly start, because I think it's our listener friends must be itching to hear from the legendary man to start with. So let me bring in Abhinav first. Thank you very much, Abhinav, first of all, for jointly hosting this webinar, and also, in principle, also agreeing to do many more coming forward. Like we just gave a tribute to the legendary Milkha Singh, I thought I should not skip this question because you live in a hometown, same as his. So the legendary Milkha Singh, who has been an inspiration for each and every Indian, recently passed away. What are your earliest memories and fondest memories of the great man?
Well, firstly, good evening, everybody, and great pleasure to be with you all on this webinar. My first initial memories of Milkha Singh were when my first coach, Colonel Dhillon, told me stories about him. Colonel Dhillon and Milkha Singh were roommates, and when I went started my sport and started shooting at the age of 12 under a mango tree in Colonel Dhillon's house, I was told daily about the work ethic Milkha Singh had and how hard he worked. So right from the start of my sports career and my journey in sport, Milkha Singh always had an important role to play. And I do believe that those values of working hard were instilled by hearing stories of him. So of course, it was a very sad day that we lost him, but of course, I think we will continue to celebrate his life, what he stood for, and made us believe in dreams. And I think he will live forever, and he will continue to inspire generations of Indian athletes to come.
Wonderful, super. And that's what I thought, because a champion like you, not losing out an opportunity like this, and to be guided by a legend himself, I think that's icing on the cake, and great words. Chanakya sir and Vishal sir, would you like to say a line about late Milkha Singh sir? Vishal sir?
Rajiv, I think, he was, we all know he was a legendary person and someone, he inspired generations of sports persons in the country. And I'm just hoping that, we should win a medal at the Tokyo Olympics in athletics, just to pay our respects and tributes.
Right. Chanakya sir, a word from you, sir.
So, I was just reminded of a few incidents in the last few years. So one is that the legendary Milkha Singh visited Jamshedpur in the early 2000s. I think it was 2003 or 4. We invited him over for two things. One, we have this annual golf tournament. And then we also started an athletics academy. And he was the one who was brought in that time as a chief guest, along with Mr. Muthuraman, who was the CEO MD that time, to inaugurate. But that's about history. But something, what I just heard, I must say that in the last few years, I think it's about 2 to 3 years back, and that was because the media was tracking him after the movie Bhag Milkha Bhag got released, and it was a massive hit. And he was at the airport. Possibly he was at Chandigarh airport or it was Delhi airport, one of the two. And one of the persons that the journalist asked him that, it's 12 in the night, you've just taken a long flight, you've come. So how do you keep yourself fit? Because he was always very lanky and active. And he says, in his own words, I remember seeing it on television, he says, Raat ke 12 baje hain, and he shared the whole thing from where he came, I think Bombay to Delhi or whatever, Chandigarh. Raat ke 12 baje hain, 1 baje hain, koi problem nahi hai. Subah 5 baje aapko Milkha Singh wahan pe bhagte hue nazar aayenge aur itne kilometer bhagenge. And I think somewhere what Abhinav also mentioned, that determination in the film that we all saw, was just the zeal and the determination. And look at the age at which he was talking, this about 2 or 3 years back. Amazing inspiration. And I agree with Mr. Vishal that if we can actually, the biggest, I would say, homage to this man is if we can get the medal at the next Olympics coming this year.
Indeed. And as you rightly mentioned, he was still so active in the field of sport, whether it's about golf or whether about little gym at his home, whatever. It should be anything about fitness, and that's the tribute to the man. Coming back to you, Abhinav, 150 medals in a career of over 22 years. Now that you have retired, how do you reflect upon your journey, which started from quaint little town of Dehradun to being one of the greatest sportsmen that this country has ever had?
Oh, well, now that I've exited my investment of sorts and I can look at my career a little bit more dispassionately, I don't look back at those medals that you talk about, which merely hang on a wall in my house. But I look back at my career or look back at my time in sport, at the relationships that I was able to build with people, the time that I was able to spend, say, with my mom or my dad growing up. My mom traveled with me as a 12-year-old boy to Germany when I started off my career. The relationships that I built with my coaches, the relationships which I built with my competitors, and the memories that I have of my sports career, that they will continue to live on forever. And of course, it is, it is the journey that I look back with extreme amount of fondness, more than the outcomes. The outcomes are nice, the outcomes are sweet, but they definitely are not the only thing in sport. And I really look back, I look back at my career and my whole journey in a way, not at the eventual outcome, but the person I became in the process of this journey, and the values that sport instilled into me. Is probably the most important thing looking back at my sports career.
Super. And that's the 360-degree we talk about. And I mean, I'm glad that it's not just about the color of the medal, it's also what it takes to win those medals and the work ethics and many things around it. There's an interesting one here. You have said that one of the reason behind you taking up shooting was that in your childhood you were obese. Can you share the story and what made you take shooting professionally?
Well, as a child, when I started as a young boy, I actually hated sport. I think one of my only talents that I had was to miss physical education classes at school. But I was in boarding school, and I used to receive a letter from my father, which arrived almost every single day, which had one commonality, which was to play sport. I obviously didn't listen to him in boarding school and eventually got out of boarding school. All this was happening when I was kind of overweight. And I moved to a day school. And that's where I was introduced to the sport of shooting. And yes, I fell in love with it, because to be successful in my sport, I had to stand still and not run around. But of course, ironically, going ahead in my sports career, the weakness that I had was my own physical ability. It ended up becoming a strength, because I slowly but surely really started working on it. But that was my initiation into sport. And perhaps that was one of the reasons why I was fascinated by my sport. Another reason I was fascinated perhaps by my sport was, as a kid, I used to love making airplane models as a kid. And I really fell in love with the Lego of shooting. I fell in love with the different parts which had to come together. I fell in love with the process that entailed my sport and the process that entailed in perfecting my sport. So those were elements which attracted me to it. And that's why I fell in love with it and stuck with it for 22 years, which is a fairly long period of time.
Super. In fact, many youngsters listening to you, Abhinav, would feel inspired. I mean, how to shape up your individual career from where you start. I mean, it's all about choices one makes, and that's what counts. Speaking more about the gold in 2008, just before the start of the Beijing Games final, you had some issues with your rifle sight. How tough was it to calm your nerves, given that there were moments left for the finals to begin?
Well, I think sport teaches you adaptability. I think one of the greatest things which sports teaches athletes is to continuously adapt to situations. And this, of course, was a situation which required an immense amount of adaptability, because, time was not my friend. But it also, why I was able to do that was, firstly, I accepted the situation. I accepted the challenge that was in front of me, because when incident like that happens, something goes wrong just moments before the start of an Olympic final, the greatest error you can do is to resist the situation, and that is just the human tendency to do, is to resist difficult challenges and to resist difficult moments. But the moment acceptance comes, you suddenly find space in your mind and brain to start working through that challenge, and that's what I exactly did. Of course, my preparation was thorough, and I had anticipated while trying to take every vertical out of the equation that during my training simulations, we also had simulated a couple of times when your rifle will be out of sync. So it was not a complete surprise to me, primarily because there was preparation behind it.
Wonderful, super. Just changing the gear, moving on to next speaker and coming back to Abhinav. It's not every day that we get to speak with someone who's termed as the builder of sports in Orissa. We would like to grab this opportunity and ask you something, sir, about the overall sporting ecosystem and the state's remarkable rise as the sporting capital of the country. Yes, I am talking about Mr. Vishal Dev. Vishal sir, starting from 1996, athletes from Orissa have been participating in Olympics without much success, as you would agree. Do you think this is finally the year that Orissa breaks the duck and gets one medal at the Olympics?
Rajiv, the issue at the Olympics is that of the country. So as a country, I believe we've not really been doing very well. Forget about any individual state really contributing to it. What matters is how well the country does. And unfortunately, over the years, as all of us have seen, the country has not really done very well at the Olympics. So the reasons are many, and there have been several debates. I don't want to get into that. But this year, at least, there's been a lot of focus and emphasis by the Government of India, by various federations, associations, and several state governments to improve our performance at the Olympics, which I'm very sure it's going to be much better. Typically, one would hope that we win. As a nation, we win medals in badminton, in wrestling, in shooting, in hockey. And when I talk of hockey, that's where I think Orissa comes in. The team is kind of very focused, very energized, very excited. They gel together as a team, and hopefully in hockey, we are hoping for a medal, podium finish this time. And as far as Orissa athletes are concerned, yes, the Indian women's hockey team has one girl, Deep Grace Eka, who's also the vice captain, and the men's team has 2 players from Orissa. So if the team does well, I'm sure the country will be proud, and of course, feel proud that there were 2 ODIs who contributed to that win. In athletics, Duti bettered her own personal record, and she set a new national record, in fact, by clocking 11.17, but she missed out, the Olympic qualifying mark by a whisker. But I hope she'll get through on the basis of her world rankings, and God willing, we might get a medal there as well. We're looking for a much, much better finish at the Tokyo Olympics this time.
Absolutely, sir. And I think it more than the individual performances from the state perspective as an athlete, I think it's the collective effort which Odisha has put in terms of providing what is required for the right preparation. As we go along, we're going to talk about that also. Just adding to that, sir, Odisha is already touted as the sporting capital of the country. World-class infrastructure, as we all talk about, for hockey and football is there for world to see. What are the efforts that are being taken to ensure the development of other Olympic sports?
Just before the Hockey World Cup in 2018, we had announced the establishment and setting up of about 10 high-performance centers. The number's now gone up to 12. 2 of those, of course, the first one to come up was Abhinav Bindra's Targeting Performance Center. It came up in a flat 3 months' time from the time that we announced it, I think in about 4 months. We inaugurated it in February. Thanks to Abhinav and his team for that. It's doing very well. The other high-performance center in hockey, of course, is being managed by you, and the person who's contributed greatly to that is Mr. Chaudhary Chanakya, and my thanks to him as well. Other than that, of course, we had done a study of how we should move forward, and what we decided was there are two obvious choices. One, areas where our boys and girls are already doing well and which are popular, with the kids here in Odisha. And the second was where there are there's a large medal potential. So looking at those sports, we've chosen shooting, weightlifting, swimming, badminton, of course. Sports climbing is a new discipline which has been introduced in Tokyo Olympics, and we have set up a world-class facility for that. So all of these primarily through high performance centers, but you see, let's also remember that high performance centers don't exist in isolation. There has to be a very strong feeder and grassroots system. And along with the high performance centers, that's what we're working on, to see that there is a continuous supply of talented athletes which moves from the grassroots, via our sports hostels, sports academies, and regional sports centers to the high performance centers where they get world-class coaching and training and ultimately win medals for the country. So that's what we have in mind. We are also closely working with various sports federations and also with state associations in that direction.
That's indeed a bag full, sir. And this area of sports which we talked about, other than just hockey and football, as mentioned by me, and I think the journey goes on and it's just a start. There's enormous amount of infrastructure coming through in the state of Odisha. And as Vishal sir mentioned, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Let me just change gear and come to Mr. Chanakya Chaudhary. The Tata Group has always believed in the use of sports in nation building. It has contributed immensely towards the development of sports and effectively used sports as a tool for community empowerment. Chanakya sir, we are celebrating Olympic Day today, and talking about Olympics, one simply cannot miss Sir Dorabji Tata role in forming the organization we now know as Indian Olympic Association. Can you share with us the vision and the deed of the great man, please?
Yeah, thanks Rajiv and Abhinav and Mr. Shaldev. Thanks a lot for setting this up, and I think it's an amazing day to go back in history and go forward and win some laurels for the country, hopefully. So, Dorab Tata, I think he was also the first chairman for Tata Sons and Tata Steel. And those were the days when people used to write long letters. And I think it's now gone out of fashion. So, our founder, J.N. Tata, he never put a foot in Jamshedpur, but he wrote his vision about how a steel town and steel company should be. And in that, there are a lot of things that he's written about sports and which sports one should take forward. And Dorab Tata, like an obedient son, actually followed and set up a lot of sporting facilities in Jamshedpur to start with. Yes, his first stint with the Olympics was in 1919, I suppose. He actually financed two of the sports persons from India. One was more in athletics, so it really helped. And then I think it was not two, I think it was more than that. Actually, there were some wrestlers he had supported in 1920. And then again in 1924, he became the first president of the Indian Olympic Association. And I think that's where his journey with the Olympics started. I think somewhere he also set a path for the generations to follow within the Tata Ford family and Tata Steel as to what all we need to do in sports. And I think that's where the journey started, where Sir Dorab Tata was concerned. He, I think, also set out a lot of ambitions for our own people of those days as to how this sports will take shape. It was not about setting up only infrastructure for your own employees or families. It was also for the community, as you rightly mentioned. And that's why if you get into the details of the sporting events and sporting arenas that we have all around our operating locations, a lot of sporting events are taking place for the community. And Mr. Vishaldev mentioned about the grassroots programs. That's the right way of picking up talent from really the grassroots and making them reach the Olympics. And I think that's what the Tata Group and Tata Steel has been following.
Indeed, sir, the seeds sown then by the great man is through now and continue to do so. In addition to that, Chanakya sir, Tata Group has a central strategy where all divisions and wings have taken up responsibility for nurturing certain sports. So while TCS focuses on running, Tata Commercial Vehicles, which is Tata Motors, looks after wrestling. What is the entire structure like, and how at Tata Group, sports is not just sports, but is a way of life?
As you rightly said, it's actually a way of life. I remember when I joined, we used to like this logo saying, sports is a way of life in Tata Steel, but it's actually been like that in our last 30 odd years that I've spent here. It's been like that. But yes, the fact is that the companies have been deciding on their own which sport to kind of adopt and then take forward. TCS is running, as you rightly said, and they're doing such a great thing all across the globe now. When I come to Tata Steel back home, and it's also been set up over a 100-year period, the kind of infrastructure that we set up across our operating locations, mining locations, steel plant and stuff like that is amazing. We have actually, when the latest baby that we have is the Jamshedpur Football Club, which is into the ISL, and we are the only club owning a stadium. And it's amazing because that's where the whole thing starts. So if I look back only at Tata Steel, though we run about 70 sporting arenas, or should we say training centers, but we have 3 or 4 academies. And if I was looking at the last 40, 50 years, it's amazing that every 7 to 10 years, we've done something towards setting up an academy. 1987 was the football academy, the first of its kind. Then today we can say that we've given out approximately 250 plus cadets from that academy who played for India, and so on and so forth. Even the ISL, which was just completed, has about 40 to 50 candidates from here. Then again in 1996, we set up Archery Academy, which has done amazing stuff with the young talent. And today we're talking about Olympics and Olympics Day. Happy to say that even in this Olympics, 2 of our ex-cadets are going to participate, Deepika Kumari and Atan Das. And one of our young girls from the academy lost in the finals just 2-3 days back. Otherwise, the team would have also had the current cadets. Similarly, we talked about Milkha Singh coming in, that was for the Athletics Academy. And then again, somewhere in 2017, we started the Hockey Academy, which started in Jamshedpur and is now with you and Mr. Vishal Dev and others. Orissa doing a great job connecting back to the grassroots. I think somewhere the legacy has allowed us to think freely and do something more and more as we move forward. And I think every company, you took the name of Tata Motors, you took the name of TCS, I will restrict myself to Tata Steel. As we speak, again, we've had some 150 odd international representations from all across the athletes and sports persons who have been a part of our family, Tata Steel. We've had about 30 odd individuals in our Tata Steel family who have actually represented India on the Olympics. And I'm just giving the data as it stands today. And something good which our organization did, according to me, was not only to support and promote individuals, but support and promote the sport itself. And I think that goes a long way in making us get closer to the dreams, because then you are not banking only on one individual or a few individuals. You are actually taking the sport to the next level. And I think what Orissa has been doing for the last few years has been amazing, starting with the hockey. And I think that's exactly the way. You set up the infrastructure and then you create events around building from the grassroots to the national and international level. And I think that's what is really good that the organization has been doing.
What a rich heritage, sir. Thank you so much for the download. It's brilliant because I think totally with you, because Tata's not just at the highest level in terms of the excellence projects, but also at the grassroots level in terms of community development as well as the promotion of sport. That's the best one can have as a combi. Coming back to you, Abhinav, let me start with the current Olympics in mind. There is a question which I have, This is the largest ever Indian contingent, about 190 odd people, out of which 125 to about 135 qualified athletes, and balance are the officials. And there is a CA Bhavani Devi, first ever fencer to qualify for the Olympics. Likewise, first time India to have 4 sailors competing in Tokyo Olympics. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, firstly, before I come to that, if I may just expand on the earlier points which were made. The real power of sport really lays on what sport can do to the community. While focusing on the elite is great, and us winning medals at the Olympics must happen and should happen, but the real power of sport lies in how sport can play a pivotal role in shaping society, how it can play a pivotal role in shaping communities. We are a very, very young country. Our population 50% below the age of 30. We need to use sport and really leverage on sport much more effectively to build character amongst our young society. And there is no better way than sport to do this. Sport, today's Olympic Day, so let's start with Olympic values of friendship, respect, and excellence. No better way to put young minds through this whole journey. Sport teaches you how to win, but more importantly, sport teaches you how to lose. Sport teaches you the necessity to have a goal. Sport teaches you hard work. Sport teaches you discipline. So very important. Look at how this pandemic at the moment, and how sometimes we struggle to get everybody to follow COVID appropriate behavior. So sport is something which remains relevant even post the pandemic. And I think while we all work on these elite programs, and while all governments and across all organizations involved in sport work on these elite programs, one must parallelly work on really getting the community together and building parallel community programs, because there lies the real power of sport. That is what will justify your investment into sport, because the medals are great and fantastic, but what sport can really do is shape our society, and shape our society by getting more people to just experience sport for the sheer joy of playing sport and instilling these values of sport. When we have more numbers just playing sport for the sheer joy of playing sport, automatically we will have more people excelling in sport, and sporting performance will become a byproduct of this whole journey and of this whole process. So I would just implore everybody to really start now focusing, as we build elite programs, but really start focusing on how to parallelly get communities together, build that community involvement in those particular sports as well. Coming to the Tokyo Olympics, of course, I am as excited as all of you on our prospects at Tokyo. I think we go in to these Olympics with so many athletes who have a realistic shot at winning gold at these games. Never before in our country's history do we have athletes going into the games starting as world number ones or starting as favorites in many sporting events. So I really look forward to it. I, of course, am not in the business of speculation, and I would not be able to tell you how much will we win and how many medals will we come back with. But I do feel that it is probably our best chance to really have our best ever Olympic performance ever in our history. And I really look forward of seeing many athletes return from Tokyo in a month or so time with many gold medals in their pockets.
Absolutely. And to have certain news which is about, first ever participation as a sailor or as a fencing person, I think it's brilliant. And that also explore our chances towards the medal tally. Abhinav, staying with you, you've said that with Colonel Rajyavardhan Singh Rathore silver medal in 2004, the barrier of individual silver medal broke, and with your gold medal in 2008, the glass ceiling of the gold broke. While India has won individual silvers in following Olympics, why has the gold not yet been repeated? I mean, it's not just my question. It is just a general, I would have thought, a claim by a
I certainly hope it's not your question, because I hate this question. But I think the answer is very clear. Sport can never be scripted. The end result of sport can never be black and white. And there's so many elements that have to come together to go all the way. And that's what makes the Olympic Games so unique, because they come so infrequently. They come once in 4 years, and you have to do everything right on that particular moment to go all the way. But just again, looking forward and looking ahead at the Tokyo Games, which are just a few weeks away, I have no doubt that we will win a few gold medals this time around. And I think our chances have never been so good. So let us all wish our athletes well. No point looking back at the past, because the past is already gone. Let's all focus our energies on the future, and I think it will be a very bright future ahead.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Just moving forward on something from, I think, a sportsman perspective, athlete's perspective, you have often listed your failure to clinch a medal in 2004 after reaching the finals with an Olympic record score being one of your strongest motivations to come back and win 4 years later. How does an athlete at the grandest stage of all overcome the trauma of defeat by such narrow margin and keep himself focused to regroup and come back? I think this is going to be very, very interesting for many aspiring athletes.
No, I think succeeding in sport is all about failing well. I think sport is a career where we fail certainly more than what we succeed, and when we do experience failure, we have to learn from failure and let go of the unwanted baggage that failure brings with it. So the faster and the sooner that you get over with the disappointment and start focusing ahead, the better. And going back into my experience in Athens, I think what Athens really taught me was to learn to be detached from outcomes. Going into Athens, I was somebody very outcome driven, wanting to win a gold medal, that was my biggest drive. But post Athens, my whole journey towards Beijing was all about the process, was all about investing in the process. The journey became its own reward. And by investing in the process and really living by the motto that it is not every 4 years, it is every day, and trying to wake up every morning, trying to be better than what you were yesterday, and trying to take every vertical out of the equation, and not really worrying about the outcome was the most important thing in my journey from Athens. I was an athlete who was somebody who struggled with self-belief. So I really, my journey from Athens to Beijing was all about not chasing self-belief, but about chasing self-respect. And that self-respect really came from the fact that, I had put in everything humanly possible to prepare for my attempt at the Beijing Games. And before I boarded my flight to Beijing, I looked myself into the mirror and asked myself the question, have I done my best to prepare for these Olympics? And have I done everything humanly possible I could? And the answer was yes. And there I was a winner. I was a winner even before I shot my first shot at that Olympic event, because I was a winner in my own eyes. And I think that shines more than anything else.
Something interesting happened around that time, Abhinav, 2008 Beijing gold medal. You, in one of your interview, you said that you wanted to quit shooting after winning gold. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I think success also brings its own crisis. And ironically, my biggest crisis in my sports career came when I actually succeeded. For 15 to 16 years of my life until Beijing, I had oriented my life towards this one moment. I would go to sleep with this one dream, which was to win a gold medal at the Olympic Games. And I would wake up every morning trying to achieve that dream. And one fine day, this dream was achieved. And I had this gold medal, which I aspired all my life for, in my pocket. I was all dressed up with nowhere to go. It created a huge void in my life, and which was incredibly difficult to overcome. To really get your drive back, to get your motivation back, and get your purpose back. And that sometimes takes time, because winning is also laborious. Winning is also draining. Winning saps you. And I think It just takes time to really find your energy back, to find your motivation back, to find your purpose back. And it takes time. And that, to me, that period and that process post my greatest success was perhaps the most difficult period in my sports career. And it required effort to get over that. But I did, and I competed in 2 more Olympic Games. I'm proud of what I did and achieved in those attempts. I did not end up winning any more Olympic medals, but I continue to chase my self-respect, and I continue to chase the journey to the best of my ability. And it enriched me as an athlete, but more importantly, it enriched me as a human being.
Indeed. And, on this note, I just, while we talk about infrastructure and we'll come to Vishal sir, just a quick one to you, Abhinav. You in your time have trained for prolonged periods in Germany due to lack of quality infrastructure here. I have seen the range in your house, by the way. That's really, really nice. And I don't know how many can afford it, but having said that, the intent to have that there itself makes it huge preparatory phase. How do you assess the current situation of training infrastructure and resources in India?
I think resources are not a problem for the elite anymore. I think elite athletes in India are well supported by various governmental programs. The Olympic team is probably going into Beijing, going into Tokyo, one of the best supported Olympic teams in terms of government support, etc. So I think resources is definitely not a problem at the elite level. It still needs to infiltrate down to the grassroots level more effectively. And I think that is work in progress. And all involved are probably looking to do that. In terms of infrastructure, I think there is a vast improvement, and that is clearly seen. Take for instance my own sport. I started shooting 25 years ago under a mango tree. When a young shooter starts to train either in Bhubaneswar or in Delhi or in Pune, have access to world-class infrastructure, and that is a huge difference. From day one, they have access to the best possible facilities, and also not just the raw infrastructure, but also the knowledge base. In at least my sport is certainly has improved to a great degree, and we also see this improvement in knowledge in all other sporting disciplines. I think a lot of investment in sport has already been made and directed towards creating infrastructure, and that must continue. But I think this next phase of development in Indian sport must see more infrastructure, more investment, towards the whole ecosystem that surrounds Indian sports and Indian athletes. I would like to see a time in the next 4 or 5 years where we do not need to import this knowledge from outside. And we produce our own world-class coaches, we produce our own world-class physios, and we produce our own world-class support system that athletes require. I think that will be another big breakthrough from India for Indian sport, and I'm sure there is work being done to achieve that.
Indeed, and I can vouch for it that good times are ahead, because in the last 4 or 5 years, I can count on many initiatives of the government as well as whether center or state, along with some partnerships. I think great infrastructure is being set all across length, breadth of the country. Obviously, Odisha taking the lead, and Vishal sir will tell us about it. Vishal sir, the Indian Olympic javelin team recently camped at Bhubaneswar for their final preparation before the Olympics and were quite impressed with the facilities around. What are your thoughts on them? And in future, will Odisha see more sports setting up their base camps before major tournaments?
There are 2 parts to your question, Rajiv. The first one is about the Indian javelin team training here. Well, it was a matter of great delight and pride. When the team shifted from NIS Patiala to Odisha, it was a testimonial to the infrastructure and the ecosystem that we've created here in Bhubaneswar, that they decided to shift from the National Institute of Sports to the Kalinga Stadium in Bhubaneswar. The second was, I think it was a great motivator and an inspiration for local athletes and sports persons to see people like Neeraj Chopra, Anu Rani, Shivpal, etc., training in front of their eyes. And I do remember a crowd every time the team was out, practicing with, I think the girls having butterflies in their stomach, just looking at Neeraj Chopra. So yes, it was a wonderful experience. And you see, as far as hosting our camps is concerned, we are already doing quite a bit. So you would know that the national under 19 and the national under 16 football teams are based in Bhubaneswar. This is their home ground. They stay here, practice here. We've also been holding camps for these teams. The Rugby India team camp is going to start towards the end of this month. We have 2 camps each for the Indian, for the women's as well as the men's team, followed by some international events. So, with improvements in infrastructure and the ecosystem, I'm sure we'll see more and more such national camps being held here in Bhubaneswar, Odisha. And just one more thing, I would like to touch upon what Abhinav mentioned, which was very critical and very important, the perspective of development of sports ecosystem, as we say. He mentioned the larger issue of sports affecting the society at large, the fact that sports builds character. I think that's very important, and therefore that connect with youth. And I'd come back to what our Honorable Chief Minister gave as a slogan some time back: sports for youth, youth for future. So if you are saying that we have to build our future, what we need to do today is build our youth, and they're through sports. So that is something which is very important. Of course, we already have created a decent level of infrastructure and ecosystem for several sporting disciplines. It's going to improve in the years to come. I'm quite sure about it.
Wonderful. And sir, would you like to make a mention about the great infrastructure which you have already put in the pipeline about hockey in the rural, the turfs and all, because that's, everybody would love to hear that from you, sir.
So, Honorable Chief Minister had a couple of years ago announced the establishment of an international sports city in Bhubaneswar, along with some world-class satellite sports complexes at 5 places, and a lot of infrastructure at the grassroots level. If you look at hockey, for example, which is your discipline, Raji, Sundargarh is the cradle of hockey, as we all know. And we took a very important and I would say path-breaking decision of having a hockey turf in each of the 17 blocks in Sundargarh. So that work has started. It will be completed in a year's time, and I think it will be perhaps the only district in the country to have a synthetic turf in each of its blocks. It will go a long way in developing hockey, developing sports persons who are playing hockey. It will provide them world-class infrastructure. We're looking at tying up with organizations like Hockey India, and of course the Tata HPC is taking a lead in that, wherein we're putting in proper coaching programs at each of these blocks. So hockey will, I'm sure, develop in a big way. We are looking at similar structures for other sports as well. We have multi-purpose indoor halls coming up in all the municipalities, which will, be able to cater to badminton, to volleyball, to basketball, etc. So a lot is happening across the entire spectrum, starting from the gram panchayats to the blocks, to the districts, to the regional levels, coming down to the state level. So there's this, entire chain which we have mapped primarily for both, for the infrastructure as well as for coaching facilities.
Indeed, sky is the limit, as they say, because as Abhinav was also mentioning, even from the quality of sport which we are talking about for our youth at an early stage, imagine the kind of exposure a young hockey player at the age of 12 gets directly on our AstroTurf, and before he or she is broken into the state team also. So you can imagine the kind of kick one has as an athlete to start his career. Chanakya sir, a quick one. Tata Steel's supported Indian contingent won big at the Special Olympics World Games Abu Dhabi 2019. The vision and effort of Tata Steel in promoting special and Paralympic sports. Your thoughts on that, sir?
Yeah, so we've been a partner to the Jharkhand Olympic Association for the Special Olympics for the last few years now. And you rightly said that 2019, we got some good medals, about 10 of them back from Abu Dhabi. And currently, we've been working very closely with them. I'm a part of that whole committee which works. And we are preparing the athletes now for the next big ones, scheduled somewhere in later, I think about 2028 and 32, somewhere there. And we should be signing off MOUs very shortly, where what will be the role that Tata Steel will play in shaping the, the thoughts of the individual athletes, as well as giving them all the support in terms of infrastructure and other things which will be required. But I think we were very, very happy when they brought back laurels in 2019. Somewhere we also felt that there is a huge difference when the normal Olympics like 2021 now in Tokyo we're talking about, and the Special Olympics which happen whenever they happen. So I think organizations like ours, if we can be of any help and support to them, will hopefully go a long way, not only in bringing laurels back to the country, but also ensuring that these individuals who from the very beginning are never seen as, on the same pedestal, can actually do wonders for themselves, their families, and the community and the country. So I think it will go a long way.
Indeed, and the contribution by the country towards the stakeholders who's to speak volumes about it. Abhinav, just a quick one on the same parlance. An unprecedented 8 para sports personalities were awarded Arjuna and Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna last year, which is a positive step. But is India doing enough for the upliftment of para sports and athletes? Sorry for playing hot and cold, and you're the best person to answer.
No, I think a lot of effort is being put to also support para sports now. I think in the last few years, even for example, award money, if I'm not mistaken, is at the same level now, which is a great sign. And I think a lot of investment is also going into the preparation of athletes in para discipline. So these are all very encouraging signs, and I fully endorse and support all the work which is being done towards supporting our para athletes. On another thing, what I think we were just talking about, I think Mr. Dev just brought up the whole part of sport climbing a few moments ago, and I think Orissa is one of the only states which has a program running and a wall, etc. And I think that is wonderful, because I think you're also looking into the future. You're looking into the future of the Olympic movement, because the Olympic movement is really going and changing towards urbanization of sport, and really trying to build sporting infrastructure which is urban in nature, which doesn't really require much investment of sorts. And if you look at the sports programs such as sports climbing, 3x3 basketball, also break dancing now is a sport, when will be a medal sport in Paris. I was totally against it, but when I first saw it at Argentina a few years ago, I was totally blown away with it, and wonderful sport to see. But these are all sports which can really bring communities together. And I would only implore you, sir, to perhaps look at putting together an urban park somewhere in Orissa, which is just specific to these urban sports. Requires very little investment, because what do you need to do? You need a wall, you need a little space. You already have existing parks, and you need to convert them into urban parks. And I think it can be a wonderful way to bring communities together towards these sports, because also we have to look towards the youth, because the youth is now looking at sport much differently. In a few years down the road, we may see esports as an Olympic discipline. So I think this could be interesting to see, and I'll happily send you some more information if you find it interesting.
So Rajiv, if I just come in here thanks for giving me the lead. Sports climbing is what we have also started a few years back, and we are actually in the process of setting up an academy. And we've already had one event at a national event in Jamshedpur in 2019, or was it 20 beginning? I think it was somewhere in 2020 beginning, where we got about good participation from across the states. And this was done under the banner of Tata Steel Adventure Foundation, which was set up in 1984 by Bachendri Pal, and that has been doing really good. But you're absolutely right, both in Odisha, what we've seen and what we are doing here in Jamshedpur. I think that's one more event which has now come into Olympics, and I see a lot of promise in the young talent we saw during this event, or otherwise, the young boys and girls were really doing well. They need the right kind of training and infrastructure. And as you rightly said, Abhinav, the infrastructure requirement is not too huge. It's easily available. It can be set up fast, and it's only a matter of getting the right talent and the coaches to take them forward. And I think we have our eyes set, like our archery academy was set up a few decades back, and it's giving good returns in terms of cadets going into Olympics. I think this is one more which we are now very keenly looking at and developing.
Thank you, sir.
Rajiv ji, just in fact, to add to what Mr. Bindra just said, in fact, there was a question. So I thought I'll just link it to that, because there's a question on dance sport, and which is directed towards Mr. Bindra. He's already spoken about the idea of an urban park, but this was actually a question saying that since dance is popular in India and it is yet, All India Dance Sport Federation isn't affiliated yet to IOA. So the question was, what steps are you planning to initiate to popularize dance sport in India? So this was a question that came from one of the attendees. So I thought, in case you want to add anything to that.
One thing is for sure, one thing for sure is that my comeback into sport will not be in the discipline of dancing.
So these are creative times also, and we need to accept that. And I think these are very, very interesting times, because the kind of skill which we possess in this country and most of the developing countries, some of these sports could really, really make the difference. Diksha, if you have any more questions in the chat box or anything, you can just take a shot at it. Otherwise,
yeah, I think just a couple of them. There was one more from Mr. Bindra on the economic factor. This is from Little Champ. I don't know what's the real name, but that's the question from Little Champ, saying that the economic factor prevents a lot of capable shooters to grow and sometimes from entering the sport. Can anything be done about the situation? I mean, it's a very, of course, a generic question, but if you would like to address that, Mr.
Yeah. I think of course there are challenges associated with my sport, because the entry level into the sport is quite high. It requires a certain amount of investment. But I think now with different programs coming in states, Orissa has a shooting program now, and then several other states are really taking up to the sport because of the success we are having at it at the international level. I think more and more opportunities will come, more and more facilities will be made available, more and more equipment will be made available. And I really hope that people from all walks of life are able to access this beautiful sport. And I'm already seeing that happen. I mean, you go to our national championships, and it's really a joy to see what's happening there. When I first competed in my first nationals, we had 200 people who took part at the nationals. Now, if you go to a national championship in shooting, we have 10,000 participants from all walks of life, from all areas, from all different locations from within the country. So it is wonderful to see how the sport has also evolved, and we have 10,000 waiting to qualify for the nationals. So it is capturing the imagination of a lot of people and people from all walks of life and from all different areas of the country.
Taking from there, Diksha, from what Abhinav just said, whoever has asked that question, I can assure that if you're talented, if you're hardworking, you're committed, come to Odisha, we'll take care. We're going to be starting our shooting high performance center very soon. We already have a 10-meter range, but you just have to be good at what you're doing. We will give you whatever is required. Come on.
There's in fact one more question for you, Vishal, since you've addressed that. It's asking about water sport facilities in Odisha, and is there a velodrome in Odisha, Vishal? So this is a question from Nachi, and as a large coastal state, I think I'm sorry if it's Nachi is a he or she, but wants to know on the prospects of water sports facilities in Odisha.
Water sports?
Yes.
You mentioned velodrome.
Yes.
So water sports is something which we are promoting, more as a recreational sport through tourism. But on the velodrome front, yes, cycling is, in our radar, and you should see a world-class velodrome coming up in Odisha in the next 2 years.
Okay. All right.
Super. Super. So, testimony to what I was saying early on with Odisha not leaving a single opportunity to grab when it comes to promoting sport. Vishal sir has already, put up front as to what is there for that young man to ask the question and be here. There is a question for you, Vishal sir, from a known person, Mukul Chaudhary, one of my colleagues from Jamshedpur. Odisha government, under your guidance, has set a very good example of public-private partnership, particularly for sports, where government has the infrastructure while administration and technical support is being brought in by the corporates. Is it an amazing model for other states to emulate? Would you like to share your experience on these partnerships with corporates and your recommendations for other state governments for the larger interest of the sports development in India? I think you have answered this before, sir, but this is a very interesting answer.
Mukul, the High Performance Center is a very unique initiative in the sense that it brings corporates, the government, and eminent sports persons together. You see, none of these alone can make a significant dent or difference when it comes to sports. But if the three of them come together, I think wonders can be created. And typically what you see is we have government facilities which are pathetic. We have coaches who are outdated. They've never had any refresher programs. They don't really know, what to coach, what training to impart. The infrastructure is rather poor. So what we did was it was actually the idea of Honorable Chief Minister that as far as funding is concerned, we get corporates that are interested on board. As far as training and coaching is concerned, we get eminent persons, sports persons on board, and we therefore have the likes of Abhinav, Gagan, Anil Kumble, who joined hands with that, Leela Gopichand as well. And the government was primarily there to support us, the whole initiative, as a facilitator. So whether it was giving land for the purpose, providing infrastructure in some cases, I think it's a model which holds immense potential, immense promise from whatever little that we've seen of it in the last 3 years. I'm sure had it not been for the pandemic, we would have produced a couple of medal winners, at least for the Asian Games and Commonwealth Games, definitely. So it is something which other states can definitely look at. And, where states come in as far as promotion and development of sports is concerned that's what I'm going to talk about. So when we decided to sponsor the Indian hockey team, both men, women, senior, junior, this question had come up as to why is a state, supporting a national team. And what we said is, it's a way that we've shown. If 10 other states take a similar initiative of supporting other sports, I'm sure the whole ecosystem will grow. Today we are talking of 10 medal winners. Maybe through this initiative, we can think of 30, 40, 50 medal winners. I mean, the sky's the limit. The next point, which is very important, and again, coming back to what Abhinav said, you see, putting in infrastructure is easy because you basically have to invest. You have to construct buildings, you have to buy equipment. It can be done by anyone. The important part is putting the whole ecosystem around it. Getting the right kind of coaches, getting the right kind of physiotherapists, the nutritionists. And that is where we as a country, not just as a state, we as a country lack. And as Abhinav said, I think that should be the focus area. For the next 5 years, we should be able to create a pool of coaches and trainers across disciplines which we think are important for us. Because most of the sports currently have foreign coaches or even foreign physios, etc. So that is, I think, so where Make in India should focus on.
Wonderful, superb, sir. In the equal breadth, sir, I mean, while we are the subject, Chanakya sir, your perspective from a corporate angle on the same thing?
See, we also have a HPC running here, which is a sports high performance center, and we set it up primarily because of the academies we run and the football league we have got into, and it helps out thing going ahead. But I think what Mr. Vishaldev said is absolutely bang on, that the whole ecosystem has to work in tandem. It cannot be one party doing something. So, and none of the states actually, or none of the companies per se or corporates can do everything on their own. So partnership is the right model. And if every state picks up some particular sport and then does from the grassroots to the international level, everything, and with the partners, I think we will make our mark very, very fast then. Because otherwise what's happening is that everyone will try and do everything themselves. We don't have the means, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the talent then to pick up. And something which I have been very, positioning this thought for some time now is that if you look at India and you map which talent comes from where, you will really pick up that, archery comes from which area, hockey comes from which area. And the best would be if the talent is available here, you might as well set up the infrastructure here. You might as well set up the PPP models here. You get the coaches here. Because otherwise what is happening is that every state will say, I like to do all the 20 odd sports. It doesn't work that way. Right? And we have examples of Commonwealth Game in Delhi where a lot of infrastructure was built during that period. And I used to be in Delhi in 2010, and a lot of contemporary infrastructure was built. But what happened thereafter? And the second model, which is now running successfully, is the visa model, where they set up the infrastructure, they have been getting the partners to come in. And I thought we heard a few names there, and said that, okay, this is the infrastructure, you are the partner, you have the expertise, run it for us. And then jointly we are taking it forward. And I think that's the model for India which will work well. Just to come back to the HPC we have set up here. Now, we obviously have a captive audience to an extent of the academies that we run, the residential academies. But my sports team has been working on extending this HPC to the vicinity, to the corporates, to the state, to the districts. And I'm hopeful that some of them will come and start using it, because it's all for the larger good. And it has to happen that way. Otherwise, I can keep it captive, but it doesn't help anyone else. So I think that model is the right model to work in India.
Indeed. And these are the win-win situations, as all the speakers mentioned, because at the end of the day, it's not one hand clap, it's both hands clap. I think time to wrap up, because we've kind of overshot our time, but I think I can't leave Abhinav before these, parting comments on the sport. He's loved, and he's kind of very proud to don colors of that. You had the privilege of being a flag bearer of the Indian contingent at 2016 Rio Olympics. What was that feeling like, leading the entire contingent with the tricolor in hand? These are those are the probing questions from many young hearts, young minds. For you, sir.
No, I think for any athlete to have the chance to lead your country into an Olympic stadium is probably the greatest honor that an athlete can ever have, and it was for me a great privilege. And I remember to have very clear memories of that day, and will always remain a great day, not just for me, but also for my family. And I was never a fan of opening ceremonies in my life, because they just demanded too much energy out of me. But this was one which I did not miss. And of course, I did it for myself. I did it also. This was a dream of my father. He always had a dream that I must, he wanted to see his son be flag bearer and lead the country into an Olympic arena. And I'm glad that I was able to fulfill his little desire and little wish. And it was, of course, also a great moment, not just for me personally, but also for my family as well. On a parting note, I think if this is the last thing, I think one thing we must do as sports organizations, and I think what every sport in this country must do, is in the next few years or in the next year, is to go and actively engage with your fans and find your fans, because each sport has those fans. We have the captive audience, but we need to go and capture their imagination. It is critically important to do that, because only then will we find sustainability in developing sport in the long term. It is then when sports organizations can stand up on their own feet and will further encourage public and private partnerships in the future. So to every sports organization, to everybody involved in sport in any ways, also run some parallel programs to engage with your fans more effectively.
Wonderful. And I know for the fact, Abhinav, you set very high standards and it's doubled by your father. So it's, and it's extra pressure on you. So, rightly so, you had the honors of doing that, flag bearer for the Indian contingent, and you richly deserve that. And I think that that sums up the session which we had. In fact, before I hand it over to Diksha to kind of summarize and thanksgiving to all, may I just touch upon on something about ABTP, Abhinav, something which you've been driving here, as Vishal sir said, and you also very briefly mentioned. In 2019, you said that overall ABTP has, which is Abhinav Bindra Target Performance Center, has rendered services close to 700 athletes across its centers pan-India for free in the last year. What is the progress on that number? It's not literally to know the numbers, but the intention into 2021, which is the progress on that numbers in 2021, and what are your plans and framework to bring in more grassroots talents into these elite centers that you have built? Because these are very, very new technologies and very, very advanced technologies. Which one?
Well, obviously, of course, that number has obviously swelled up over the year. But we've also had to adapt to the pandemic when facilities were closed and so on and so forth, and we've done a lot of work online as well for the athletes. Even in the Orissa ecosystem, we've started to really engage with them. What we also started to work on certain different areas, which I really believe are critical to athletes' performance. One being athlete mental health. We really started focusing on that, and we've done a few sessions also within Orissa, specifically for athlete mental wellness. Currently, we are engaging in a program to train trainers and bring in knowledge also towards the whole ecosystem that surrounds the athlete on athlete mental health. Because as athletes and as support and as systems as well, we are often very guilty in starting to believe in an equation, which is a gold medal equals happiness. But in all reality, athletes and the system must reverse that equation and make happiness the gold medal. And then the gold medal will automatically come. So a lot of work has happened also in the last year, specifically on this. We've also introduced the whole aspect of sleep science into our centers and into athlete training. We've also introduced areas of nutrition. And this is a journey which we will continue to have and continue to leverage on. We will continue to leverage heavily on science, technology, data, because that is very, very critical to athletes' performance going forward. But also trying to leverage it more in grassroots level training, because we can leverage all this to an extreme level to identify talent and really use science and technology and data to pick the right talent for particular sports. So that is a journey which ABTP will continue to do, and we remain committed to that.
Thank you very much. And in fact, there are some SMSs coming my way on a very pertaining topic of is shooting still the best medal hope for us?
Rajiv, you can answer that yourself, I think, for sure, yes.
Yes, indeed, but I think they would like to hear from you.
Definitely.
Wonderful.
Multiple medals.
All right. We have a great contingent, and what lovely preparations which has gone into it. We just hope, fingers crossed, all comes through well. We've also come to the end of this discussion and webinar. Before I hand it over to you, Diksha, to do the honors always, I would personally like to thank Abhinav Bindra for sparing his valuable time. Mr. Vishal Dev, out of his busy schedule, he was supposed to travel. Thank you, sir, for sparing this time. Most enriching discussion for some time now for me. Chanakya, sir, who I always look upon for every little advice, and thank you for guiding me, sir. And thanks for your most enriching inputs on this particular theme and topic. I hope our listener and viewer friends enjoyed this session, and we look forward to have a few more with Abhinav and team. Diksha, I know you will say you have said it all, but you still need to do the honors. And I think Vishal sir has something to say. Yes, sir.
No, Rajiv, I just want to, convey my appreciation for what you've done. There's been a series of webinars that you took the leadership to organize. You've created a platform where all the high performance centers interact. I think it's a great step. Congratulations and best wishes. You've shown what a leader does. Wonderful.
Learning from you and Chanakya sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. And
Well,
Diksha,
I just repeat what I always do at the end of every webinar, that Rajiv ji, you've done it all. I don't think there's anything else left for me to summarize, but I would take from, what Abhinav said at the end, that, the goal should be happiness. I think I really like that, and the gold medal would follow. I think that's a brilliant way to end this, and been a very insightful session. So would like to once again thank all our speakers, our audience. Again, we have got great responses every time during these webinars, questions on chat, from social media, SMSs directly to Rajiv ji as well. So I think that's another reason that, motivates us to keep coming up with these webinars. So thank you so much, everyone. And once again, thanks to all our esteemed panelists. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Chak De India.
Yeah, Chak De India.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.